What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WrestleRant, where every single Tuesday I, Graham GSM Matthews, break down all the live specials and pay-per-view events I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking NXT TakeOver Unstoppable from May of 2015. I was going to say one of the better takeovers, but all the takeovers are great. There really has not been a bad takeover up to this point. Of the 17 that have happened as of this recording, every single one has either been good, great, or amazing. This was one of the better ones, I would say, at least for the top two matches. So we'll start from the top here. The opening match, Finn Balor versus Tyler Breeze. The winner would earn a future NXT Championship match. Now, the match was supposed to be a triple threat with Hideo Itami, but because Itami got hurt, like in real life, he got legitimately hurt like days before the show, which sucked. It just became a standard singles match, so I was really looking forward to that triple threat. Balor and Breeze had matches before on NXT TV, had worked well together. This was another really fun match. They picked up the pace for the big show, had a great match. Balor went over, the new #1 contender to the NXT Championship. But yeah, Tommy's injury was really unfortunate. They did show footage of him like outside in the parking lot getting attacked. They just showed him laying on the ground. Actually, coincidentally enough, the Mechanics at that point in time, who would later go on to become the Revival, Dash Wilder and Scott Dawson. They attended to Hideo Itami, and then Kevin Owens walked by and said, "Oh, that's a shame." And then that was really it, implying that it was Kevin Owens. It was never confirmed, though. In fact, when Itami came back, it had been so far removed from when he was attacked that when he came back, literally over 15 months later, it was barely even acknowledged and never explained. Which is out of the ordinary, which is pretty odd for NXT because they usually do a good job of tying up loose ends and talking about storylines and not forgetting about stuff. But they did in that instance, which was pretty disappointing. But by that point, anyone who could have attacked Hideo Itami had pretty much moved on. Like Kevin Owens was already main roster bound, like as of this show, much less a year and a half later. So there was really no going back on it. But like I said, though, Balor and Breeze, really good match here. Great opener. Balor goes over. Once again, the #1 contender to the NXT Championship. And like I talked about in my Beast in the East special, where Balor would go on to beat Kevin Owens for the NXT Championship, that probably would have been Hideo Itami finally hitting the GTS on Kevin Owens to win the championship. Had he not gotten hurt, he probably wouldn't have won this match had he been a part of it. After that, we had a women's tag team match. Charlotte and Bayley teaming up to take on Emma and Dana Brooke. This was kind of the beginning of the partnership between Emma and Dana Brooke on NXT and later the main roster in early 2016. A good match, nothing too great. Dana, even at this point, was still pretty fucking bad. She had just debuted, so it was acceptable, but we're over 2.5 years removed from this show, and she still sucks. So I think she needs to be moved back down to developmental to get better, because she still is absolutely abysmal in the ring. I just watched the match with her and Alicia Fox on Main Event from last week. Good God, was it bad. Anyway, though, at least Emma, Bayley, and Charlotte were able to carry her to a competent contest here. Pretty decent match. Charlotte and Bayley having good chemistry as partners, despite their history as opponents and rivals. Charlotte was pretty much a babyface by this point. Bayley getting the rub with the victory. I think Charlotte was the one who picked up the pinfall victory for her team. She was pretty much main roster bound by that point. Bayley, I think, should have scored the victory. Emma getting pinned was pretty unfortunate. She had just went heel, but Dana Brooke had not been beaten yet one-on-one, so they weren't going to have her pinned. But they did have Charlotte beat her, I think, at some point after this show. Not like it really mattered if she got pinned here or not, but whatever. Still a fun women's match for what it was. After that match that really exceeded my expectations, Baron Corbin versus Rhino. On paper, I don't remember it being that great, but when I watched it back, it was actually a pretty good match, which is why I do these WrestleRant reviews to begin with, to watch back pay-per-views or live specials I haven't seen in a while to kind of refresh my memory. This was a pretty good match, not like a great technical masterpiece or anything, but for what it was, considering who was involved, it was actually a pretty good match. They knew their weaknesses, they knew their strengths, and they played to those strengths too, by brawling all around ringside. The crowd was into this. A lot of explosive offense. In the end, Corbin winning in just under 7 minutes. A little over 7 minutes, I should say. And what was a good match? Again, Rhino was there in NXT to put talent over, which is exactly what he did. Put Corbin over. He would put Balor over and a few others on his way out of NXT before arriving on the main roster last year after the brand extension. But yeah, pretty good match here. Good momentum builder for Corbin. He was slowly honing in on that character where he would like hate indie talent and ECW guys and shit like that. So beating Rhino here, I should say, was a good role for him. Good role for Rhino and a good win for Baron Corbin. So I thought this was a lot better than it really had any right to be on paper. After that, for the NXT Tag Team titles, Blake and Murphy defending the twin titles against Enzo Amore and Colin Cassidy. Decent tag team match. You get what you get with Enzo and Cass in the ring as a tag team. As opponents, they're just not good, but at least as a tag team, they had that chemistry, obviously. Blake and Murphy were never really that great to begin with. This was right around the time after they turned heel on TV, so the match had at least some storyline significance. They had been trying to recruit Carmella, Blake and Murphy, that is. They failed, so they enlisted the assistance of Alexa Bliss instead, who went heel on this show. TakeOver Unstoppable is famous for being the show that Alexa Bliss went heel and debuted the persona we see today, which is awesome. So this was a good match. Kind of a shitty finish with the interference from Alexa Bliss, but it made sense. It turned her heel, gave birth to a new heel faction between those three. Although Alexa Bliss was always the star, Blake and Murphy were pretty much afterthoughts. But it was a fun match for what it was. The crowd was into it. Enzo and Cass are obviously over, or at least were over at that point. So they were into the match. I would have put the belts in Enzo and Cass in Brooklyn. They didn't do that. They did it with the Vaudevillains instead. I think it would have been a prime time to put the belts on them. They didn't. Whatever. But still a decent match, nevertheless. After that, for the NXT Women's Championship, Sasha Banks defending against Becky Lynch. Again, going in, a match I really was not looking forward to very much, just because Becky had just turned babyface, it seemed, after turning on Sasha. They had been friends, allies I should say, not even friends, for the first half of 2015, with Becky Lynch helping Sasha win matches. And then when Sasha won the championship, she wanted nothing to do with Becky Lynch, which is where the tension was teased leading into this encounter. So Becky, I mean, she had always been a very good worker, but she had yet to have that one amazing outing that really turned heads. This was that outing. This was that match. She came out with the bright orange hair that we have today, that she has today, with the goggles and the whole steampunk entrance and the music and all that other shit. She already had the music by that point. I think she debuted that maybe a TakeOver Fatal 4-Way, if not shortly before that. But anyway, not Fatal 4-Way, the Fatal 4-Way at TakeOver Rival, the one I reviewed last week. But anyway, this was an amazing match. She had a fantastic match here. The story they told was so fucking good. And again, for a match that people really had no reason to care about going in, they ate this up. Sasha Banks, if anything, was the fan favorite coming in. They were kind of booing Becky. She didn't really get much of a reaction when she came out. But by the end of this, people were on their feet applauding her. That's how good of a showing she had, how good of a match she had here with Sasha. This was great. Again, the story they told was sensational. Sasha threw out targeting the arm of Becky Lynch, which is where, she would use the arm bar, the bank statement, which would focus on the arm to begin with. And being as flexible as she is, they were able to do a lot of cool spots where Becky Lynch looked like she had her arm torn off by Sasha Banks, because she's so fucking flexible. So a lot of the spots here were great. Sasha took a lot of cool bumps herself. And at one point, Becky Lynch came oh so close to locking in the disarmer and winning the championship, but Sasha got the rope. Becky came off the top rope. Sasha whipped her right off, locked her in the bank statement, and got the victory. And then afterwards, like I said, the standing ovation for Becky Lynch. So great match. Both women would end up on the main roster less than 2 months later, but this was a really, really good match from them. And even more so for Sasha, even more so than Sasha, really for Becky Lynch, a standout showing that would solidify her as a real player in the women's division, both in NXT and on the main roster. That really, her coming out party, so to speak, I guess is the word I'm looking for here, the term I'm looking for, because after this, she was a star on the rise. And then we get to the main event for the NXT Championship, Kevin Owens defending against his former friend Sami Zayn. And a lot like the Rival match that I talked about that they had at the Rival show that I talked about last week, it really wasn't a match as much as it was a brawl, because from the get-go, they were all on each other. Sami Zayn had gotten hurt at the hands of, Kevin Owens took, he took credit for it in storyline, but it really was John Cena. Sami Zayn injured his shoulder before his match with John Cena on Raw for the US Open Challenge on May 4th of that year, and then Kevin Owens taking credit for it in storyline, which is why Kevin Owens arrived on Raw and targeted John Cena 2 days before this show. But anyway, as for this feud, Sami Zayn came into this match injured. So he was out on the shelf. He was sitting on the shelf injured up until like December. So I'm not sure if he was medically cleared here to compete. I mean, obviously he was because he wrestled, but like I said, it really wasn't much of a match. He did a lot of stuff here. He did a lot of offense. He got a lot of offense in, but I was surprised that they cleared him to compete for this show. I'm glad they did to blow off the feud between Owens and Zayn for the interim. But I just thought it was really weird that he did get legitimately hurt. He was out for a while, unless something happened here to re-aggravate the injury. He had been out for quite some time. So anyway, the match was really good. The crowd was into this. The brawl took place all around the arena. Zayn showing a lot of heart, a lot of fight, but in the end, Owens capitalizing, hitting a pop-up powerbomb to Sami Zayn on the ring apron. The medical team, staff, whatever, had to attend to Sami Zayn. And then before Owens could continue beating down Sami Zayn, he technically did hit him with a chair because the key was late. But after he hit him with a chair, like literally mere seconds later, did this mysterious music hit with a great intro, awful follow-up, but thankfully they would tweak it about a month or so later. Samoa Joe emerging from the back, making his NXT debut, confronting Kevin Owens for a solid 4 or 5 minutes. Crowd goes fucking crazy, chanting, Joe, 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 Joe's gonna kill you. And then at the end of the show, Owens embarked to the back before coming back out, teasing that he was going to come back out to the ring, but he didn't before leaving to the backstage area once again, with the crowd chanting, what a father and father of the year, which I thought was hilarious. But really good main event. Again, not the match we all knew not the match we all knew they could have, but they would have that on the main roster, a little over a year later anyway. So it doesn't really matter. They had that instant classic. For the feud they had, the story they were telling, it was exactly what it needed to be. Of course, people weren't hot on the fact that it was a no-contest finish, but it was what it needed to be. They didn't pin Sami Zayn for the second straight special. Kevin Owens, you keep the championship on him for a little longer, and then in comes Samoa Joe making his NXT debut. So I thought this was really, really, really good. You get a hot new babyface in Samoa Joe. They never really did the Owens-Joe feud. It was kind of a filler feud or a mini feud on NXT TV for like the month of June before Owens moved on to Finn Balor. So we got the match on an episode of NXT TV, but we never got a rematch after that. And then the feud kind of abruptly ended, and then Samoa Joe moved on to Baron Corbin going to take over Brooklyn. But anyway, a fresh face that had been rumored all day long that day. I just remember being so excited to possibly see Samoa Joe, and then when he showed up, I went nuts. Because this was before like AJ Styles showed up, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode, James Storm. It was unheard of for someone from TNA like Samoa Joe to show up in WWE or NXT, whatever. And when he did, the place went nuts. I went nuts. I was so happy. Got to meet him a few months after at an independent show. One of the coolest guys I've ever met, wrestler-wise. But anyway, yeah, great ending to a very, very good show. Like I said, nothing short of a great show was this TakeOver Unstoppable show. And all the takeovers are just awesome. So what to watch from the show? Definitely the women. I thought the women stole the show. So if there's any one match to watch from this TakeOver, it's Banks and Becky. The other matches really weren't must-see. I mean, even the main event was really good, but it wasn't like, oh my god, you need to see it. The Joe debut you need to see, which happens in the final 8 or 10 minutes of the program. But beyond that, there really wasn't like a great match other than Banks and Becky. I thought the main event was real good. Tag title match was well wrestled. It was more about the angle, the Alexa Bliss going heel. Baron Corbin and Rhino exceeded expectations with a good, solid undercard match. The women had a fun match for what it was. The opener was real good, so maybe that match too. But overall, just another really, really good show with a great atmosphere at Full Sail University. So I have fond memories of this show. Enjoyed watching it back on the WWE Network. Next week, right here on WrestleRant, we are talking about TakeOver Brooklyn from that August, which I was there for. Probably the TakeOver I've watched back the most, more than any other, just because I was there. I mean, I was at TakeOver Brooklyn too, but this TakeOver holds a very special place in my heart and being one of the greatest shows I've ever been in attendance for. That's how much fucking fun TakeOver Brooklyn was. So we'll talk about that next week right here on the show. But until then, and in the meantime, and in between time, guys, you can follow me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. So like I said, guys, next Tuesday, all new episode. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.